After the opening statements, then each candidate has 3 minutes to answer each question, starting with the second person who gave their opening statement and then alternating the order with each new question. I don't really even understand what I just said, but the idea is to go down the road. We're going to go down. Okay? And then at 9:15, the Q&A period will end. Any unanswered questions will be given to each of the candidates to provide at a later time, but that's plenty of time. We're gonna have a real Q&A session. Everyone should enjoy this, and let's give a round of applause to our candidates. We're very busy. Okay, then each candidate is going to be given a 3-minute closing statement that will be in the opposite order of the opening statement. So if we're going to go this way, then we're going to go back down that way. The meeting will conclude after the closing statements are delivered, and if time allows, informal discussion may continue until the meeting is adjourned at 9:45. So thank you, and let's begin. And let me just say this, if you do anything at the end of this night, if you're not already working for one of these 4, and Carrie Solage would be a 5th candidate, then you should. Because one thing I know for sure, each of them are going to be a heck of a lot better than their Republican opponent. All right? And it's too important. It's too important. This is a great race for an open seat. It was Kathleen Rice's seat. It's an open seat. All right, so did we decide we're going in alphabetical order? All right. Siela.
Greetings. I'm Siela Bynoe. I am a 49-year resident of the village of Westbury. I'm a Long Islander's Long Island. I did my full academic career here on Long Island. After graduating from Westbury High School, went across to Nassau Community College, then on to Hofstra University, and then to Long Island University, where I got my master's in public administration. I've given my life to public service. Even when I was working for a bank, I was advancing their Community Reinvestment Act at European American Bank. And that was important because I was able to work in communities that didn't typically have access to credit. And it was my job to analyze them and open the door for first-time home buyers. I left there and I went to Long Island Housing Partnership. And I worked there where I administered $3 million in first-time home buyers down payment assistance. Went on to a long career in housing where I was able to house seniors and disabled individuals. From there, I was able to further my public career by being elected to the Westbury Board of Education. It was after serving there in 2 terms, I went on to serve at the Nassau, I'm serving now at the Nassau County Legislature. All of my lived and career experience leads me to this moment in time where we are right now. And so I'm aspiring to go to college, to Congress. I'm working to get to Congress because my experience has told me that we have challenges here on Long Island, challenges in being able to meet our housing crisis. We have young people, older people leaving in droves. I know that with my experience in housing, both federally and here at the community level, that I could go to Washington and identify solutions so that we can address that. I also will tell you that my experience goes further in my lived experience as a breast cancer survivor. And as a breast cancer survivor who was newly employed and had very little sick time, it was my colleagues that I worked with, strangers essentially, who gave of their time to make sure that I could stay on the health benefits and on payroll. So I want to go to Washington to make sure that no one has to stare down the barrel of that gun. I want to go and make sure that we have better health outcomes here in Nassau County, specifically in CD4. This is a historic moment in time. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I'm here to seize that moment, not for me, but for all of the residents of the Congressional District number 4. Thank you.
Here comes Keith Corbett. My name is Keith Corbett. I'm the mayor of the Incorporated Village of Malverne.
I'm the law chair of the Nassau Democratic Party, and I'm also Commissioner of Long Island State Parks appointed by Governor Kathy Hochul. We are in a crisis in this country. And if anyone here thinks Washington is going the way it should go, or if anyone here thinks what you see on TV is what you want to leave your children and grandchildren, I don't think anyone here thinks that. I think we all see what's happening on the news. I think we all see what's happening in the media. And I think something has to finally change. I've represented almost every Democratic candidate in this county and Suffolk for the better part of 2 decades. I represented Gillen, who was an excellent town supervisor. I represented Siela Bynoe in the very beginning when you were getting this. Siela has been a great county legislator. I currently represent the DCCC in Washington. I have for the past 12 years. Sean Patrick Maloney is the head of the DCCC. I'm his personal attorney, and he's a friend. I represented the 4 past governors of the state of New York and the current governor, Kathy Hochul, as well as Senators Thomas, Brooks, Whalen, Hobbs, Bobby Kennedy. I've been around a while and I've represented all these individuals. I have relationships with all of them on every level of government, and I have resources so that when we get to Washington and you need to make the change, we can actually hit the ground running on day one. Siela spoke about housing, and you're absolutely correct. There is a housing crisis in this country. There are 2 bills currently pending in the House. Probably won't get acted on to February. One of us will have to be there for it. One of them could provide significant affordable housing in the state of New York, including in areas of Nassau County that I have mayors yearning to get more affordable housing. They can't. I helped draft one of those bills with a congressman from New Jersey. I understand Washington. I represent 19 members of Congress and 4 United States senators. Hi, Zoom. There you go. The fact of the matter is we need someone who can go down there on day one, understand what needs to get done. I want to explain to you why I chose to do this, because my partners at my law firm think I'm crazy. And to be honest, Patty McDonald's back there, she knows I'm a little crazy. The fact of the matter is, I have 2 kids at home. Many of you have kids and grandkids. And I find myself wondering what we're leaving them. You know, we inherited as a country, at least when I came out of the womb in 1979, I think was even in a better place with an oil and gas crisis than what our kids and grandkids are dealing with now. This isn't the time for people to just want to up their game and move on to Congress and figure it out. It's time for people to go down there who understand the people down there, who have relationships with the people down there. So you can use those relationships, you can use those resources to actually bring significant funding back to this district. We've received some funding, no idiot amount of other people across this country, if you ever want to go and look. The point of a congressman is to ensure that the resources come back to the entire district. Malverne could significantly reuse resources. It's necessary. I made a commitment to do that. Westbury, Elmont, Long Beach, North Hempstead, through the town of Hempstead. Federal resources are needed, and we need the people who have the relationships and resources to get us there. Thank you.
Next, Laura Gillen.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm going to talk really fast because I don't have that much time. So I'm Laura Gillen. I am a candidate for CD4, and I hope you will all vote for me on June 28th and then hopefully again on November 8th. Many of you know me from my tenure as the Town of Hempstead Supervisor, but for those of you who don't know me, I was born at Mercy Hospital in Rockville Center. I grew up in Baldwin. I went to high school at Sacred Heart Academy with people from all over Long Island. I spent my summers working at Camp Anchor in Lido Beach. After graduating college, high school, I went to college at Georgetown. I worked on Capitol Hill for Senator Breaux and the DSCC. Then I came back to New York. I did a bunch of different things. I went to India. I worked for Mother Teresa in Calcutta. Came back. I went to law school. My parents are very happy about that. Did 1 year at Georgetown at night. Worked for a federal judge during the day. Went to NYU to finish my law degree because I got married to someone who lived in New York, so that was better. And then after that, I went to work at a big Manhattan law firm. I did pro bono work for a place called Sanctuary for Families, helping victims of domestic violence. I had 2 kids while I was there. Then I moved back here because I wanted to see my kids and went to a law firm that is in Long Island. And then eventually I decided that throughout my life, I wanted to help other people. That's part of who I am. Camp Anchor, Gay Men's Health Crisis, Sanctuary for Families. But I decided that the way I could help people in my community was by running for office. So eventually I got to the race for Town of Hempstead Supervisor. I saw a government that was mired down in waste, patronage, and cronyism. I thought We need to make this place better. I took a chance. I ran for office. I got in there and I made things happen. I rolled up my sleeves and I got things done. And I'll tell you what, if you paid any attention, you know it was not easy, okay? An elected official once said to me, I think you have the worst job in New York State politics. And that was after a meeting that they had voted, I think, just to talk about the order that I could say things. That's what they voted on at the meeting, and a couple of other bad things too. But I did the work. I got transparency legislation passed. I got ethics legislation passed. I got veteran benefits legislation passed. I got the first 5-year multi-year capital plan passed, wherein I put money towards fixing our roads and to delivering benefits to communities that have been ignored for the Republicans for decades. I put that in my capital plan. I got that done. Again, it wasn't easy, but I did what I had to do. I worked with the other side as I had to in very different ways. And I went into the lion's den and I never stopped advocating for you, for what I believed what was right, and for what the residents needed. And that's exactly what we need in Washington. Washington is a mess. Partisan politics is poisonous now. Say that 3 times fast. We've got our democracy is in crisis. Women's rights are in peril. We've got an affordability crisis. People can't afford to live here and anywhere else. I'm going to go down there and fix that. There was more, but I have to respect the rules. Thank you.
Kevin Shakil.
It's okay. It's okay.
Connected?
Yeah,
Of course, you have battery.
I have battery. I just want to make sure we don't run out.
Sorry.
Okay.
Kevin Shakil.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin Shakil, and thank you so much for the Merrick Democratic Party for inviting us here tonight. Thank you so much for all of you guys who are here tonight who took, today's Monday. You guys took your time out to come and to meet us today. So thank you for all of you guys to come out today. My name is Kevin Shakil, and I'm 29 years old. I'm a Democrat who is sick and tired of how politics is being played in this country. For the last 8 years, we have seen a standstill in Congress. A lot of finger pointing, Democrats' fault, Republicans' fault, Democrat fault, Republicans' fault. When are things gonna actually get done? We have all the politicians who are here who say that they've accomplished so much, right? But how has our lives actually changed? I live here on Long Island with 2 little girls, Layla and Alina, who's 6 and 3 years old. I am not excited at all to see the future that they're going into. We keep hearing about changes. We keep hearing about this is going to be done, this is going to be done, but nothing's actually getting done. And I'm sick of it. Along with the people in my age group, they don't get involved in politics because they're sick of the politics. This is what we're doing right now. I'm stepping up for my generation and generations before us and after us because we need to see real change. I'm running to be your next congressman because I want to see real change in Washington and not just lip service. Thank you.
Give a Bellmore-Merrick Democratic Party cheer for our 4 candidates. The questions, I think, are going to be coming to me, but I would be remiss if I don't mention, and I might be missing something, so if I am, let me know. But we have 3 people that are in office or who have run for office in this audience, and they're good friends of ours. Sylvia Cabana, step up for a second. Come on. Avila, one of our candidates. Title, this is Vince. Trustee in the village. And I have to say, at least when it comes to Vince, he's been in long before he was elected. He was helping people, including myself, get elected. So thank you very much. And that's what everyone here wants you to do. Help get these people elected, because this seat has to stay Democratic. And I think we heard from all of them. They're all great, right? Come on. So we're gonna go.
So now Keith answers first, 'cause she.
Okay, so we're gonna skip one and go back. Okay. So what is,
I'm sorry, did we each answer the question being asked?
Yes.
correct,
Thank you.
and we're gonna go, because we started with Siela, now we're gonna go 3-1.
That was the part that confused you and I when you read it, right?
I'm still confused.
I hear you, brother.
What?
I never got a sheet.
I gotta be able to read this now.
Go to the next one then.
What is the number?
What's the number one issue?
What is the number one problem facing the revenue? I'm sorry. What is the number one problem facing the residents of Congressional District 4? And what is your solution to this problem?
Yep.
So our number one problem and your solution. Go
Thank you.
ahead, Keith.
Oh, listen, the number one problem we have in Washington right now is it ain't working. It does not work. There's partisan rhetoric, there's rancor, the left and the right just blame each other. We need to be able to go down there, reach across the aisle and get resources back in the district. Recently, though, in the past month, I think this changes in this district. Right now, illegal guns is an enormous issue in this district. I just had a conference call again today with Patty Ryder, who's Commissioner of Police Department. The amount of illegal guns being picked up and trafficked here in Long Island and across the state is dramatic. It has significantly increased by about 105% since the bail reform laws were put in place. It is through the roof. The way to fix it, we finally, for once and for all, need a real comprehensive federal program that funds the local police departments locally in every state so that we can actually put together and stop the trafficking of the illegal guns. If you would have asked me this 3 months ago, I would have talked about women's rights. I would have talked about other issues. But the fact of the matter is illegal guns right now is the number one proponent of crime that is happening. You go home at night, you watch TV and you see what's happening in New York City. It's starting to seep its way right into the 4th Congressional District and right here into this county. We need to stop the trafficking of illegal guns. We need to get beyond the partisan and the rhetoric. I don't know anyone, Republican or Democrat, who's against illegal guns. Let's finally make Washington funded. It almost was funded 11 years ago. Congressman out of Nebraska tried to put it through. Stalled on the floor. Let's finally get something done to stop the illegal trafficking of illegal handguns so we can start making our way back and keep our communities safe. Thank you, Mr. Denneberg.
Go ahead,
I
Laura.
didn't know if we were clapping or not.
Thanks,
I
Laura.
wanted to be polite. Okay, so I agree that safety is a very important issue, but I think the number one critical issue that everybody's feeling right now is affordability. Housing affordability, prescription drug affordability, gas affordability. I mean, like how all you people at home on Zoom, you're saving a lot of money by not having to drive here tonight, right? So we need to tackle this problem immediately. How do you do that in Congress? So first of all, I think you should have an immediate gas tax holiday. Right now, tomorrow, we should have a gas tax holiday. Second thing is that we should also be working in terms of gas production. We should also be working to become more energy independent and move towards more renewable energy and green energy sources so we can power our houses without relying on dictators to give us oil. Prescription drugs. Drugs are too expensive. People on fixed incomes can't afford to eat and have their medicine. That should never exist in this country. As a member of Congress, we need to allow Medicare to negotiate with pharmaceutical companies and lower the price of prescription drugs for all families in the United States. That's critical, critical, critical. Other things we need to do is we need to make sure that the money we send to Washington, we get back to put into our social services problems. And this goes to crime, right? A lot of the crimes that we're seeing sensationalized all over the New York Post is crime being committed by mentally ill people. And we know that we have a mental health crisis, not only with severely mentally ill people who commit these crimes, but also with people dealing with COVID stress, people dealing with stress. We have a suicide epidemic in my town, in Rockville Center, young kids committing suicide. Mental health is so expensive that we need to lower the cost. And so we need to make sure we go to Washington and we send money back here and make prescription drugs, mental health more affordable for people living here, because that is a crisis that we're dealing with as well.
How do we do it?
I think the number one issue we're facing in CD4 right now is our public safety. We're seeing crimes through the roof, illegal guns, people getting killed, people getting shot. CD4 contains so many minority districts, and nothing's being done. Somebody gets shot tomorrow, and it's just another headline, and nobody considers it, nobody thinks about it, it just goes away. But yet you have somebody get shot in another district, and the policing is there to investigate and whatnot. I think what we have to do is we have to fund our police. That's very important because we have to make sure our police departments have the resources that's needed. But the funding will come with strings that have to be attached with it, with accountability and transparency. The only way we can ensure that public safety is taken serious is by funding our police, but it's ensuring that they have transparency and accountability for it. Because the residents of CD4 are suffering. And we need to get down to Washington to provide the resources and to provide the funding for it, but make sure that we're not just giving money away, that we're making sure that the funding that's going there is benefiting the community as well.
Thank you, Kevin.
Problem with going last. So I agree wholeheartedly with my colleagues here who have stated public safety and affordability. The cost of living here on Long Island is a significant issue. And they're interdependent. They're not separate and apart from each other, right? Sometimes desperate people do desperate things. I have that Ring camera at my house. And when I tell you it's going off constantly in that chat about people coming into people's homes, trying to open their doors, into their cars, into their backyards, scrounging around for things. And it is tied very closely to the mental health and the behavioral health issues that we're facing here on Long Island. Illegal guns, ghost guns, all of those things are frightening. As a former school board member, I would tell you that we understood the assignment. The assignment was to make sure we had quality education for our young people. But one of the other things that we were really, really concerned about, and what I think kept most of us up at night, was how do we keep our kids safe in school? The key is keep our streets safe, keep the illegal guns off of our streets. And so that's why, as a Nassau County legislator, I worked to make sure that when we saw spikes in crime, you're only as safe as the area that has the highest crime, right? And so we were seeing an unprecedented level of number of crimes and shootings in the village of Hempstead. And that's why I went and I worked with the then mayor and the trustees and the county executive and our police commissioner at Nassau County to create a task force to go into those areas and rid that area of the illegal guns. Secondly, I worked across the aisle with my colleagues at the legislature. All 19 of us unanimously voted on a local law to make sure that mental health first aid was trained to our police officers, to our 911 operators, to every public-facing county employee, because we know what the suffering is. We're providing social services, we're providing human services, we're providing services to our elderly. And for that reason, I know that we have to go to Washington, we have to work across the aisle, and we have to bring common sense solutions to the issues that we're facing here, including the rise in the cost of gas. Just last week, the Democratic caucus sent out a letter to the governor to say, hey, listen, give us an opportunity to reduce the tax here on the gas. And I think it's solutions like that that are just the logical next steps and the multi-pronged responses that we can employ, and we can address all of those things. Thank you.
There's really a lot of questions. I want to thank you for sticking with the topic of the question, because this is the Bellmore-Merrick Democratic Club. These questions are going to cover everything. So great job. Let's again hear for our candidates. Question is about gun safety. In the past 3 years, New York has passed 13 gun laws, making New York one of the states with the most sensible gun laws. Will you make the fight against gun violence a priority when you get to Washington? We're starting with Laura.
Yes.
Well,
Kevin.
that was my #1 issue, public safety. So of course.
Siela.
100%. I would look to continue the partnerships, right? You can't do anything in a silo. There are multiple law enforcement entities that can work together to stop the infiltration of guns. We have to make those partnerships a reality and resource them appropriately, 100%.
Dave, the answer is yes, and I think what I hit on earlier was, you just hit it yourself. You said we have one of the most restrictive gun laws in the country, but yet these guns are being transported all over the state like candy. The problem is you don't have a federal solution funding local police departments to stop and give them the resources to stop the illegal trafficking of guns. That's never happened. It's left to the 50 states. We're not going in and telling the Malverne PD, the Muttontown PD, the Nassau PD what to do. We're giving them the resources and the training so they can stop the trafficking of the guns. That federal solution was on the table 11 years ago. I'm telling you how to resolve it. It should be put back on the table because we need real solutions to problems we've been talking about for way too long. The answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. This question, we're going to start now with Kevin. This is a healthcare question. Do you support Medicare for all? Why or why not?
Absolutely. Why I support it is very simple. We live in the richest country in the world. Why are there people going without health care? The basic human necessity. If somebody's sick, they shouldn't have to worry about going to a doctor and how they're going to pay for it. We're in the middle of a pandemic right now. And we see the disparities it had between people who had healthcare and people who didn't. We lost countless lives. And if we don't address this now, I don't think we'll ever address this. So yes, when I get to Washington, that's one of the main focal things I'm going to do. Medicare for all, to make sure we pass it and we make sure we pass common sense, low cost quality health.
Siela.
So I shared earlier a little glimpse of my personal lived experience as a breast cancer survivor. I shared with you that having been newly employed, while I worked through 90% of my treatment plan, there was a short stint where I had to be hospitalized. And having been newly employed, I had no more time, right? If not for the wonderful, really basically strangers at the time that I worked with who gave of their sick time to keep me on the payroll, to keep my medical benefits intact, I may not be sitting. It's 18 years later, and I'm forever grateful for those individuals who did that for me. They will forever be my extended family. And it's that same spirit of making sure that the least of us have what they need is why I would most certainly support Medicare for all. Thank you.
Yes, I'm a strong proponent, especially in the wealthiest nation on earth, that we should have health care for all. But I'm going to be clear, Medicare is almost broken. There's a better system than Medicare, and it can be solved by 3 lines of law in the Affordable Care Act that could extend that across the entire country to all age groups, that they refuse to do because the Republicans put up opposition to it. I agree in quality health care for everyone. It should be a human right. It's dignity. Most bankruptcies in this country, by over 75%, are caused because of health care. They're caused because someone in your family, a mother, a child, or yourself, or your spouse, lands up in the hospital and can't afford the medical bills. Healthcare should be a universal right to all of us. It should be a fundamental right. But Medicare, why it's there now, there are better solutions to provide that healthcare, and it can be done right through the Affordable Care Act. There are stepping stones that were put there that we can use to ensure that everyone, every single person in this country has quality healthcare and is taken care of. I said before, we're hearing a lot. There ain't a person at this table is not for Medicare for all. There hasn't been a Democrat sitting at this table in the past 40 years that isn't for Medicare for all. What I'm talking about are solutions. What I'm talking about are resolutions. I have resources and relationships to ensure that happens. We were 5 votes shy last time. Let's extend parts of the Affordable Care Act to make sure that our children, our families, and our parents actually have universal health care in the American way. Thank you.
Shocker. I support the notion that every American is entitled to health care and that health care has to be made more affordable. I remember from my own experience working in the legal profession, I used to always get the Cadillac of health insurance plans, right? By the time I was much later in my career and making a lot more money, I could no longer even come close to being able to afford the Cadillac of health insurance plans because the premiums just went up so exponentially. It was crazy. I was like, I mean, I think $100,000 a year to get just your health insurance, to be able to go to whatever doctor you want. So I absolutely agree with everybody on this panel that we need affordable health care. But I do kind of support, or I do support the Mayor Pete plan, which is Medicare for all if you want it, right? Some people are, for example, in unions, and they have really, really awesome health plans that don't cost them that much. And they might want to stay with that and not be forced to go into some uniform plan for all. If we can find a way to do that, that's what I support.
Okay, my next question actually is 3 questions, but 2 of them are covered a little bit later on. So I'll jump down. On this one, small business versus developers in downtowns. And I believe we're now starting with Siela. Go ahead. Small business versus developers in downtowns. I believe this question is someone wants to know what, if anything, you could do on the federal level to try to help small businesses who are maybe fighting against big developers in our downtown areas. Box stores versus small business, I think is the nature of this question.
Okay, so downtown, when I think of downtown in the village of Westbury. It's a great place. It's a nice compilation of anything you'd want to do in terms of cuisines, different types of stores. Our Westbury Art Center sits just right off the main strip there. It's a great place if you haven't been there to visit. We have senior recreation centers, youth centers. We have a couple of big box, Rite Aid, CVS. It meets the needs of the current community. But there's opportunity. There's always opportunity. I applaud the village of Westbury's mayor. We've been able to do transit-oriented development in that space like no other. And we're still going to be able to develop. It's meeting the needs of, we have a Bristol right there. It's meeting the needs of the seniors that require that assisted living. We have cool downtown housing for our young people. We have housing for all. And that's what I think downtown should look like. That's what downtown should feel like. It should be a place where not only the people who live, work, and play there have an opportunity to have a full suburban experience. It should be for those that come and visit us. We should be able to make sure that those small businesses have frequent visitors and frequent events that we have there so that we can maintain the economics of those small businesses. They're the backbone of the community, the cornerstone of the community. And I feel that in many cases, transit-oriented development, it shouldn't be an either or, versus. I think they can coexist together, and it needs to be aesthetically and characteristically in line with currently there and with the vision of what the community wants. It has to be done through consensus building. It's not, you can't go in and turn a switch on. You have to build consensus to get there. And I think that there's opportunity for incentivizing that kind of community, that kind of growth. There's opportunities throughout CD4 for that type of development. And so, big shout out to the mayor of the village of Westbury. I think he got this right. And I think the trustees that work alongside him got it right. But more importantly, I think the village residents are open for that. And I think that if we can do what's right and what's appropriate in every community across this region, we can have a real strong economy and great places to live, work, and play. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue.
When I think of a downtown, I think there's no better downtown that would exist in Village of Malverne. If you want to talk about a small downtown feel with butchers and the bakery and neighbors who come in and come out, who support their small businesses, you will never find a better small place than Malverne. The problem we're having now is in this country, there's the SBA, Small Business Administration, which has been funded out of Washington. We rank in the 4th Congressional District in the bottom third of funds from the SBA going into this district. That should not happen. That should happen anywhere on Long Island, from Westbury to Malverne, from Elmont to Rockville Center. There should be significant funding for our small businesses. That's what the job of the representatives to do, to make sure they get it. One of the things, though, you brought up is all this mega development. We've seen the development happen, and we've seen the changes occurring in Hempstead or Westbury or Uniondale. You know, these IDAs, which can give out pilots, industrial development agencies in New York, they have affordability components. So you have to, and rightfully so, make sure there are affordable units. They now also have requirements that you have electricity for electric cars on the outside. You know what they don't have? They don't have requirements, which can easily be done under the law, that small business, local small business owners must fill a portion or a larger portion of that commercial space downstairs. Okay? There are plenty of people, individuals like in this room, who get up every day and work really hard at their small business, whether it's a cleaners, a bakery, maybe it's a bagel store. There's no reason why these developers have to have large swaths of space for national companies to come into. It's a simple fix. Require that small mom and pop businesses that make Long Island and many of our communities, and especially Malverne, what it is, be required in those developments. It can easily be done the same way we do it for affordable housing, rightfully so, and other environmentally conscious alternatives, which I think we got to start talking about tonight, some of the environmental stuff, because I mean, we need to start making sure the planet stays the way it should as well. But there's easy solutions. We just got to get down there and get them done. So I think there's an opportunity for us to really work on that, Dave.
Laura,
So look, I don't think this has to be a war like developers versus small businesses. I think that you can find a way to make incentivize developers. It's kind of along the lines of what Keith said, to help and support our small businesses in our communities. I dealt with this firsthand in the town of Hempstead. We had many developers coming to look to build projects. And sometimes development isn't always bad, right? We talked about the affordability component of development. So in residential units, as long as they have a certain proportion of affordable units in there, sometimes they'll get an IDA break to build. So in Baldwin, which is a community that's been desperate for revitalization for 40 years, I think, we in the town of Hempstead applied. We got a $10 million state grant, not a federal grant, state grant. And the signature project that I hope will go up is going to be a development right across from the train station in Baldwin. And that will have an affordability component, unless things change since I've left. That will have an affordability component, but that is what is going to sprawl the growth of that area. Right now, you have all these vacant buildings, right? They're prime material for a small business owner to come in and set up a business, but the business isn't going to be successful unless you have that main street downtown, right? So development and developers aren't always evil. If we have a beautiful building go up where a used car lot used to be in Baldwin, and we see something beautiful there, then that will start to incentivize people to come and want to shop there and do business there. And that will support the small businesses there. I also agree with Keith that we need to have a representative in Washington who will advocate to get more assets back for SBA loans to businesses here in the 4th Congressional District.
So when I think about downtowns, right? I have a two different type of approach to it. Westbury's downtown, wonderful job. Village of Hempstead, robbery. We know what happened in the village of Hempstead. We know what's going on. When we think of downtowns, or we think of these pilots that are given to these developers, right? Well, what has the community gained? Nothing. And there's those who are here sitting on this side who have helped the developers and have robbed our community. So what I would do is I would go down to Washington and make sure that the funding that comes to our community is actually given to our community to serve our community and not to serve these developers. No more pilots. Unless you're actually doing the work and benefiting the community, no more pilots.
thank you. Interrupt the questioning just for a brief second. It's not easy to be a candidate. It's not easy to sit up here. So to all four of you, let's give them a round of applause. And without anyone pushing you, get involved in one of the campaigns, because what's most important is to elect great Democrats. And I think you're looking at 4 great Democrats right here. You really are. Thank you very much. Now, a couple of these questions I'm gonna jump through and try to put together, which is about the Ukraine. So I know we did a moment of silence before, but I think with people dying and with, you know, really the brink of World War III could be upon us, but a country, and I went to college with Ukrainians right in the area, because I went to Cooper Union in the East Village. And it's a wonderful, wonderful community that had nationalistic feelings. So let's, if everyone can rise, let's have a real moment of silence, what's going on in Ukraine.
Yes.
Thank you all so much. With that, I think we start with Keith. So I have 3 questions that deal with the Ukraine here, from what is your position on the Ukraine to what can we do right now in the Ukraine, to do you support a no-fly zone in the Ukraine? So I'm going to leave it as to you. You would be our representative in Congress. And what would you do, given this situation, to help resolve it?
Sure.
Just real quick, people online are asking about sanctions.
Okay.
Do you support sanctions
Thank you.
on Russia, obviously?
Well, I heard 3.
Thanks, Nicole.
I have 3 parts, now 4 parts to that question. I'll try and answer them all. Can I stand for this if you don't mind?
Yes.
So first and foremost, you know, something we're going to do in the Village of Malverne in the next few days, and you've seen other communities do it, is we're going to start gathering resources that we can send to the refugees in the Ukraine. Children, women, those that are being displaced. But I got to tell you something that's kind of disheartening. We've been to 4 different organizations. It's very tough for any local group, I don't know if anyone's done or any community, to find the proper organization that can actually get the goods that you all bring in there. I've reached out to Congressman, I've reached out to a state, United States Senator. We finally found something through the Catholic relief organizations that we're going to use. Really tough. We should be in Washington at least providing resources to our residents that are willing to help. Verified entities that we can really trust, that when community members like yourself want to help those in need, we can actually make sure the help we're given makes it to those who need it. That's first and foremost. Second, I completely support the Ukrainian people. I believe what Russia is doing is akin to what happened at the very early stages of World War II. In my opinion, I think history has taught us, don't shirk from your responsibility. When they come in and invade, you go in and stand up to them. That would have happened in the early 1940s. We may have had a different turnabout in the war. And you're having a very similar thing happening today. I must state though, even though in hindsight, I was not agreeing with the Biden administration in the way they were playing it politically on a global scale, it did work to bring a lot of resources, get in Germany to stop Nord 2, which I thought would never happen, getting the sanctions imposed, even going after the oligarchs with the entire European community has worked. I think one thing that's played out is they've shown that Russia is not as strong as everyone believed them to be. And I think they really, really underestimated the integrity of the Ukrainian people. And as anyone knows that history teaches you, when your back's put up against the wall, a lot of people will fight. And that I think we need to give a lot of respect to their leader, Zelensky, and what he's been able to mount. I think there's been a lot of resources given in that community, and we need to make sure we stand firm. No fly zone. Listen, we should be allowing our planes. We should be giving our planes, not stopping the planes from Poland from going in and helping the Ukrainian people. And we should control the airspace. I'm not saying we have to get into a direct conflict yet, though that time may be coming, but we should be controlling the airspace, not allowing the Russians to dictate what's going up above Kiev and the other nations. The fact of the matter is you need to stand up to dictators as soon as they go in. We've learned that. You can go back to Attila the Hun, you can go back to Alexander the Great. Once they invade, stand up firm at the beginning. Don't wait, because that snowball starts rolling and it gets too fast. But I do agree with the way they've done sanctions. I'm in favor of sanctions. I'm in favor of further sanctions on Russia and Russian businesses to ensure that we really start, because their economy has taken a real turn in Russia and it's working, but we got to keep doing more. Thank you.
So Ukraine, I'm for it. I'm for democracy. In terms of our strategy, I think first of all, as a member of the House of Representatives, any strategy you have has to be well informed by people with intelligence briefings, people from the military who know the actors in this conflict better than any member of Congress would. I would certainly afford myself of the benefit of everything that was non-classified intelligence about what is going on in the area. In terms of what's the strategy right now, it does seem that economic sanctions are working, and the strategy of crippling the Russian economy might be the best and safest way for us to resolve this conflict. So I'm always in favor of trying to resolve things with sanctions as opposed to military force. However, one thing we know is you have to stand up to bullies. We cannot let Putin having a nuclear bomb dictate the rest of the way the world goes for as long as he's in power. So if it comes to a point where he violates one of our NATO allies, or he crosses a line of international law where we have a legitimate internationally law principle basis for retaliating in kind, I think we must do so.
I totally support the Ukrainian people, and my hearts and prayers are with them right now. But that's not enough. We must provide more weapons to them because that's what they need right now. They're at war. We must send more troops to our allies, the NATO allies, so Russia knows not to come near them. We need to ensure that we stand up to Russia right now and send Putin a strong message that he cannot do this ever. If we allow this to happen, it would be such a drastic change of who we are as a country. As Americans, we stand up for what's right. We would never back down. And on helping the Ukrainian people, I have an organization called Empowering Young Professionals Long Island. And we've been working with our partners all across the island to gather goods to send them to Ukraine. There's an organization called Helping Hands, which serves people internationally. I've been in talks with them how we can get the goods directly to them. And let's make sure that we send a strong message and support those who are trying to get out of Ukraine by fast tracking refugees because they're trying to get out of the war, women and innocent children. We must fast track them to get them here so they won't be harmed.
So I agree with the Honorable Supervisor Laura Gillen. We have to spend the time. Have to spend the time to be formally provided information to the extent that you have all that you need to make informed decisions. I'm going to sit here humbly and tell you, I don't know the ins and the outs of, what information the US government has in this very moment. It's changing, right? It's fluid. It's a fluid situation. And every briefing that they're getting, by the time they get the briefing, the situation has changed. So you have to be able to adapt. And the way you do that is by having information. So you have to have the information. You have to be informed before you start making those decisions. And I would work to make sure that I had the most current information possible. But I will tell you that what's happening in the Ukraine is a real David and Goliath situation. Russia thought they were going to go in there and that they were going to exact their will. And it is the heart and the spirit of the people of the Ukraine that's really, in this very moment, protecting those who have stayed behind. And so I do think that we, as in a humanitarian effort, we have to get everything that they would need to our NATO allies and those that are helping in this refugees experience. We have to make sure that the sanctions continue to roll out. Cannot stop the pressure. The pressure has to be on. And I think that aside from doing the sanctions and doing all that we are in the current moment, we have to make sure that we are sending arms and we are protecting the innocent. That is a basic tenet of who the United States is. And we have to do it well. And we have to make sure that we do have access to get all of the goods and services that people are putting together. I witnessed when we had these terrible hurricanes down in the Caribbean. We work and we put all these things together and they sit in a stockpile here in the United States. It's of no use to us here. We have to find a way to get it out. And so I know that our partners in aviation and can help get it closer to the spaces that can then make it across the border and get it to the people in need. So I'm in support of everything that was said here today, but I do think that without having the full briefing, the highly classified briefing, I'm not in a perfect position to make the calls of what we should be doing in terms of air zones and protecting them in the best possible way. Thank you.
Given time constraints and the number of questions left, is everyone okay if we maybe shorten it to 2 minutes or 2.5?
We have till 9:45.
What time is it now?
Yeah, we want to let.
8:11.
Do we have a lot of questions left?
Yeah, well, okay, we'll see how it goes. Next question is, we feel very concerned about the situation in Ukraine and the whole world is in support of that. We've answered that. What about Kashmir, where more than 110,000 civilians are killed by Indian occupation forces? UN has promised people of Kashmir the right of self-determination in 1948. If you are elected, will you have selective justice or will you raise the voice, your voice, for the people of Kashmir? Laura,
Yes, Laura.
starting with you.
Yeah, so I don't believe in selective justice, whatever that means. It doesn't sound like something I would agree in. I believe in justice. Justice is a uniform commodity that shouldn't be applied just to benefit some communities over others. But with respect to Kashmir, I will say that I'm not going to answer that question because I just don't know enough about the issue.
Kevin.
Very simple. An injustice to one is an injustice to all of us. And the fact that the people of Kashmir are suffering, we have to raise our voice for everybody who's suffering. So to answer your question, of course, I will raise my voice when I'm a member of Congress for the people of Kashmir and the people who are suffering worldwide.
Siela.
So, whatever I do in terms of leadership, partnership, I always fight. I do it with the effort of being even-handed. I believe what you do in one situation sets a precedent and how you should deal with other situations. So I believe that we should not leave anyone to suffer. I don't care if they're in Kashmir, if they're in Ukraine, if they're in Africa. We have a fundamental responsibility to do our best in the most appropriate ways to safeguard human life and to make sure that we are doing what we would do in any situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith.
Last time I checked, we're the United States of America. Last time I checked, we were a beacon of hope and democracy for the entire world. We took out and won the Cold War. We stormed the beaches of Normandy. I believe we should stand with any people that are oppressed. This conflict's been going on for way too long. I understand the issues are complicated, but if you have a people out there who are being oppressed, whether because of their religion, their skin color, we should stand with them and we should use everything at our disposal to ensure that those people are protected and that they're stood up for. We've been looked to in the entire world order for the better part of 50 years, more than that, since World War II. And we got to remember that's who we are. We are here to support and to help those that are being overridden or those that are being oppressed. Now, that being said, as a member of Congress, and Congress does have the ability to declare war, I think we all know that. Anytime you're going to send our sons and our daughters and our fathers and our sisters and our mothers into a conflict, you must take into consideration all the options that are on the table. I don't believe we've used enough options in the Kashmir conflict. I believe there are more options we could utilize before troops on the ground and creating an escalating a situation in that part of the world. I don't think we want our kids involved in just yet. But I believe we have to stand with them and make it clear, no matter who the administration is, that we stand with any people across this globe that are oppressed, and we got to use all the alternatives to make sure we get there. But again, as a member of Congress, one of their highest duties is the right to declare war. You got to take into consideration those lives of those children we're going to be sending there. But I think there's a lot more that can be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is campaign financing. Kevin, you get to go first on this. Are you accepting corporate PAC money? If so, how can you guarantee to represent the people of the district and not big donors?
Well, I don't have to answer the second question because the first answer is no. I'm not accepting any corporate PAC donations. I'm accepting only donations from people because I'm going to fight for the people and serve the people. That's it.
So I have not accepted any corporate PAC money. And, but I'll tell you as a legislator who has accepted donations from unions and other, special interest groups that have influence, that I don't make my decision based on receiving a donation. I make my decision solely based on what's right in that particular situation. And so at this moment, I'm not going to be bought. I'll be unbought in that respect.
At this moment,
I'm sorry?
you said at this moment, I'll not be able to be bought.
I said I will not be bought. I will be not, I will be unbought is what I said. I will not be bought nor sold. I personally, at the end of the day, you have to look yourself in the mirror. You have to stand flat-footed. You're the person that you have to live with. Right. And so I make my decisions on what's right. And I think that I have a track record of that while sitting in the legislature. I don't yield to special interests. I do what's right for the communities that I serve. Thank you.
Dave, as you know, I'm a campaign finance and electional attorney. I represent PACs, I represent corporate PACs, I represent labor unions. I have many of my clients who wanted to give me money and I will not accept it. I have not accepted any money from corporate PACs and I will not during this campaign. I will accept money from interest groups who believe in an issue and I will accept money from individuals. The fact of the matter is I do have to just point out the amount that a corporate PAC can actually give a congressional candidate is so low, it's probably not going to make a difference for any of us, so we should all say no anyway. But the fact of the matter is, no, I don't believe in big corporations being able to throw their weight around and then maybe influence an election in that way. I think the people should decide who actually goes to Washington, who gets to represent you.
So I've not accepted any money from any corporate PACs. I believe that campaign finance reform is something that's paramount. We need to overturn Citizens versus United. In my race for town supervisor in 2019, I ran against an opponent who raised a fraction of the money that I raised, yet he outspent me 2-to-1. Dark money in elections is a very, very serious problem that needs to be addressed in Congress and something that I will make a priority for me. We will be running against a well-funded Republican operation. We saw right out of the bat that I think there was a $10,000 a plate dinner right after Bruce Blakeman won the county executive race in January, and the Garden City Hotel was packed with people. So all of us need to know that we will be running against a candidate that will not lack resources. However, as Keith points out, first of all, the amount that corporate PACs donate are so low. And second of all, I don't even think that corporate PACs generally give to candidates in open seats anyway. So I think the issue will probably be moot anyway.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. So, I mean, the candidates are doing great. Let's give them a round of applause. PACs and things like that. Remember, they're all PACs, whether it's labor or right to choose PACs that were not for the ability to make PAC contributions. Some of the interests that we hold most dear sometimes couldn't get to the table because our donors tend not to be as rich as the donors on the other side. But anyway, what is your opinion on statehood for DC?
Oh, that's a bad question.
Are we starting with Keith here or?
I think Siela.
Siela? Siela?
I'm glad it's you, sorry. Good luck.
So, statehood for DC. I'm gonna actually say that I don't feel fully informed, but I do feel as though, when you have a segment of a community that is paying taxes, they're doing their part as citizens, that, it's a situation that we should fully explore. And it's a situation that we should really consider. I think that I would need more information, weigh out the pros and the cons before I fully, support this issue in either way.
Keith,
Yeah, I mean, it's an issue that obviously has become more prevalent as the population of DC increases, which I think we've all seen, and taxes have gone up there as well. I mean, I'd be interested in exploring an option. Most of the federal government exists within a 2-mile span of DC. That could be cornered off and kept as federal capital. Obviously be exempt, just like we want our federal capital there, not owned by one state. And you could probably still, it's up to the people of DC. They're either going back to Maryland, Virginia, or creating their own. I don't think they'd be big enough to actually make their own statehood. So I think the issue that we're wrestling with here is, while they do have more representation now, they actually do have a delegate that sits in the United States Congress, and why there has been more federal funding to DC, I think there are ways to corner off geographically to ensure that they actually get a full seat. The problem is, based upon the population right now of DC, they wouldn't even get, they'd get like a quarter of a congressman. But we want to make sure they get funded. And I got to tell you this, Washington should fund DC and fund them more than they do now.
Laura, sorry. Go ahead.
So look, I lived in DC while I was in college and in my first year of law school. And certainly I think in a representative democracy, people need to have a voice in their local government and in their federal government as well, if they don't have a state government. So as Keith said, there is a delegate, but I think that we have to make sure that the people in DC are adequately represented at the federal level and getting the resources they need, right? Because if you don't have that voice there, then you will get shortchanged. So I think that there's ways that we can explore how that representation would be best suited for the people of DC, and I think it's something that we should look at. But again, I don't know if we're quite at statehood.
Okay, thank you. Kevin,
I learned in 5th grade in the Constitution something called taxation for representation, right? I feel that if the people in DC are paying their taxes, they should have their statehood if the numbers are there. I'm not sure what the numbers are today, but I would make a more informed decision once I look into it. But taxation with representation is important.
well, brace yourselves, everyone. The next 3 questions, all the questions were great, but the next 3 are so right on for what Congress does and beliefs that all of us in this club and all Democrats hold very, very dear. So we're going to start with Keith on this one. Are you for or against giving Medicare the power to negotiate drug prices?
I am for giving Medicare the power to negotiate drug prices. I think the drug prices in this country, they just keep going up and up and up. I got to tell you, in the village of Malverne alone, when we do our healthcare plans for our employees, and the drug care that goes apart with that is a large percentage of that premium. It's hitting you everywhere. It's hitting you at home in your own pocketbook. It's hitting you when you get taxed by a village, a town, or a county. The fact of the matter is, we should have a concerted effort to allow Medicare to negotiate for drug prices, or we should have an, similar to what we do with the ACA, the Affordable Care Act. We should be able to have a entity that negotiates on behalf of the residents, on behalf of the citizens, to lower prices. What's happening right now with the drug lobby, I mean, the way Pfizer is getting all the, I mean, it's no secret to anyone. Pfizer gets all the doses, Pfizer gets all the vaccines. There were 3 companies that all had a vaccine, 2 of them are almost identical. I mean, the drug lobby is controlling Washington, DC. The drug lobby is adding not just significant cost to the price of drugs that your parents or your children need, it's adding taxes to you because you're the one paying for it when your government's paying for their employees to have drug premiums. You're getting hit 6 ways to Sunday, and we need to make sure the federal government can negotiate on behalf of its citizens to ensure that drug prices come down. It is a real significant issue in this country, and it's something I will gladly take up and work to address once I get to Washington.
Laura,
I think I answered this already in my first, what is the greatest problem that the residents of CD4 are facing right now in affordability, that yes, absolutely, the government, Medicare should be able to negotiate with drug manufacturers to lower the prices of prescription drugs. I mean, I think about, like, my nephew has asthma and his insurance only covers one inhaler. He's a 10-year-old boy. What if he loses it? If he loses his inhaler and he doesn't have a spare one, he's dead. But a spare one costs hundreds of dollars. It's so expensive. So are we going to take a chance that a child could lose their life because their parents can't afford a spare inhaler? And the insurance companies are so greedy that they're only going to cover one for a child or even for an adult. I lose my keys sometimes, right? So we need to make sure that prescription drugs are affordable. The price of insulin is out of control, right? We need to do this, and we need to look at other things. There are entities negotiating with prescription companies, right? You know, this pharmacy, you can sign up for this card, and if you use this card, you might be able to get, and what they're doing is it's an independent businessman or businesswoman who sets up this company, they negotiate, they do these cards, and they get the prices a little bit lower, but they're getting really rich. We need to cut out the middleman, right? We need to cut out the middleman, and that's an easy way to bring down the price of drugs. So yes, 100%.
Okay, Kevin.
Absolutely. And this hits home to me. My wife has sickle cell. She takes medicine every single day. And those costs for those prescriptions, you guys have no idea. So would I give Medicare the right to negotiate with drug companies? Absolutely. Because it hits home. And I'm pretty sure it hits home with most of you guys as well.
Thank you. Siela.
100%. Having served in affordable housing for the last 19 and a half years, with the many of the residents being seniors or those that are disabled, I've witnessed firsthand where, you know, they're cutting their pills in half. They're skipping doses, every other dose. They're not really, you know, having the optimal outcomes, even in a managed care situation, because of the cost of that pharmaceutical. We have to negotiate it. It's unfathomable to me that anyone wouldn't support that. It's the right way to assist our families who are living with chronic health conditions or just conditions that, you know, require the asthma, diabetes, blood pressure, sickle cell. It's in everybody in every family is impacted by that. And I think that we could really assist in the bottom line of every household if we just allow for this to move forward. Thank you.
Here's another great question. By the way, from the candidates, how about a nice round of applause for this audience? You guys know your stuff. If elected, what specifically would you do to advance a positive climate agenda? And we start with Laura.
Right, so, you know, environmental issues were at the forefront for me as Town of Hempstead Supervisor. I did a lot of things to ensure water quality. I was, I think, the first local leader on Long Island to initiate litigation against all the various companies that had been contaminating our waters with emerging contaminants. I believe that litigation is still pending. I'm not in the town anymore. But I think that we had the green energy bill, but it was too unwieldy. We got to break it down so we can build consensus with the other side. When you have an omnibus bill that has all these different parts, it's harder to get the other side to come on board. So I think we need to break it down and have line items, because also when you have line items and independent standalone bills, it's harder for the other side to say no. It's the same thing we saw with Build Back Better, right? All they're talking about is the price. And all the good stuff in the bill is getting lost in the sauce, right? So if you have an independent item and you put it up, it's harder for the Republicans to say, no, we won't vote for it, right? Because then they're taking a position on an issue, not on a price tag. So I believe that that's the way to move forward with positive legislation for green energy and green initiatives.
Well, being 29 years old, I think that my generation has suffered the most for what's going on. I have asthma. Did you see the kind of air quality that we have right now? We live in CD4, right? And what astonished me is that they say that we're gonna have these storms that haven't been seen in 100 years, every other year. And nothing's being done about it. And we talk about, oh, the Republicans, oh, the Democrats, they don't want this, they don't want that. Why not roll up our sleeves to pass something and get it done? We all want clean water. We all see the gas prices that's going on right now. It's unaffordable. We should take this as a sign that we need to come with proper legislation to further going green. With that, we can incentivize and provide federal funding for people who have cars between 1980 to 2005, maybe, that if you turn your cars in and you get an electric car, we will subsidize some of it for you. We talk about wanting to go green, but we're not putting anything in place. Solar power is something that we learned that it works. Wind power works. What are we doing for it? Absolutely nothing. And that's why I want to go to Washington to bring these ideas and make these kind of legislation changes, because I'm sick of this Republican Democrat thing. Establishment, non-establishment. We need to get it done, because if we don't get our act together, what are we leaving my kids or your grandkids? An unhealthy planet, extremely high gas prices, no clean water. This is horrible. That's why I'm fighting. That's why I'm running to make these changes.
So first, I would tell you that the environment has been a real big concern for me. I represent the Lakeview, Rockville Center, West Hempstead area, groundwater, water that they can't cook and wash their clothes with. God forbid you have a pool and you want to have some entertainment in your backyard for your children. The water's brown. It's a real issue. So I've been concentrating on how we could remedy that. And I worked with New York American Water, and they required that they put together a corrective action plan, held their feet to the fire, made sure that they employed everything that they put into the report. They put tens of millions of dollars into that community to make sure that we improve the quality of water. When you look at water as a finite resource, got concerned about the fact that, it's projected that, the next couple of generations, there won't be enough water to sustain them here on Long Island. So I went and I worked with my colleagues. I introduced a bill, and unanimously we passed it. It's a smart water sprinkler system incentive bill, so that individuals who are irrigating their lawns, that they can put this smart sprinkler system on, and it'll communicate with the weather forecast, so that your water sprinkler doesn't come on if there'll be rain later in the day or the next day. It's not enough just to have those apparatuses on there that tells you whether the ground is moist in the current moment. We have to start using technology to make sure that we can conserve water. In terms of making sure the quality of water is at its optimum, I passed, again, unanimously, a bill that I authored that requires Nassau County to author a report annually that looks at the water quality from providers across this county, so that we can identify emerging contaminants and work to eradicate them. We have to, as law, I'm using her statement earlier as an example, how you get things done. You do break it down into smaller bills, things that they're not included with a poison pill, where people say no to the larger picture, so that you can build consensus and we can do the things that we need to do to make sure that we have a sustainable environment here in Nassau County. We have to look at how we're going to use technology, how we can change manufacturing. Concrete manufacturers are utilizing tons of water. We have to, there are opportunities out there to have alternatives. We have to work together across the aisle to make sure things like that happen, and that's why I'm going to Washington. Thank you.
Thank you, Siela. Keith?
Thank you, Dave. And I mean, I think you know more about water in this room than many of us, and what you've been fighting for out there. So, listen, we have a ticking time bomb happening right here on Long Island. You really don't see it on the news and media. It occasionally pops up. We get a lot of water from the aquifer. And we've had a lot of things being dumped in there in the aquifer, whether it was Grumman or whether it was sewage power plants. You know, I represented the city of Long Beach in their contract. What happened was Bay Park sewage treatment plant was dumping 1 million gallons. That's right, 1 million gallons of sewage into Reynolds Channel every day for the past 40 years. I represented the city. We worked with the county, and we were able to get that rerouted. So instead of it coming into Bay Park, we're now rerouting that sewage from Bay Park out to Cedar Creek through federal grants, and then it goes further out into the ocean, as opposed to being right there where people are fishing and swimming every day. That's finally been put in place. We closed down the sewage power plant in Long Beach. We've been able to reroute everything from Bay Park to Cedar Creek, thereby cleaning up your aquifer. It's why you start to see the water and the fish and everything else in Reynolds Channel start to come back. The bigger issue we have right now, when you talk about brown water, we've had some of that in Malverne as well. I see Patty McDonald back there. I mean, she started it with American Water, making sure 8,000 linear feet of pipe in Malverne get changed every year. We've extended that over the past years to 12 and 13,000 linear feet. That's using relationships, using the water company, using elected officials to make sure you bring back for your residents, so you start solving the brown water problem, at least in Malverne. And we've been a dramatic decrease has occurred there. The problem we're having is the aquifer is contaminated. We have the lawsuits going. We now have these water boards. Dave was a big proponent of that. We finally got New York American Water put to the side. The state created the South Shore Water District. Problem is, Dave, as you and I both know, not much funding going into those water boards, is there? A little bit, not much. So you have these, go ahead, Dave, tell me.
No, go ahead.
So you have a lot of funding going in. You don't have a lot of funding going in for these boards to actually do the job we want them to do. It is a problem, not just in Hoosick Falls, New York, where the water was contaminated, or in Flint, Michigan. It's a problem that's going to pop up here in the next 10 to 15 years if we don't start looking ahead and trying to fix the problem now. And I think there's significant money in infrastructure bills for us to get significant funding to ensure that these water districts are funded to decontaminate and to ensure that an aquifer starts to stay clean and gets repaired from all the things that are happening with Reynolds Channel and everywhere else. We need to seriously start repairing our water infrastructure. And that's what I will do in Washington, because it's needed more importantly on this island than anywhere else in the state of New York. Thank you.
All right. This is a huge issue. It's the climate. It's one of our issues. Everyone knows I've been fighting with Claudia and all of you so that we're on public water just like everyone else. I think it's a huge difference between Democrats and Republicans. The Herald did a great job, and Republicans already making excuses not to get a public water company to take over this private water company. Is Mayor McDonald this here?
Yes.
That's, so we do have a former elected official, right? Mayor McDonald, who I got to work with. Let's give her a nice round of applause.
Can I say one thing?
No, you're gonna get some.
You have our support, and you have my support that we need public water.
Thanks. And if we're ever gonna have a coordinate, like in Suffolk, they have one water company. There's some environmentalists don't like Suffolk County water, but 90% of Suffolk's policy when it comes to our #1 natural resource, water, is under one agency, and it's very affordable. Here in Nassau, we don't have that at all. Laura wanted a 30-second rebuttal.
No, I didn't want a rebuttal. I wanted to know if I could take a break to use the restroom.
Oh, I go with that.
Yeah, let's take a few minutes.
No rebuttal, just the
I'm
restroom.
down to, I need to use it too. I have 3 quick announcements. First of all, or 4. A round of applause for Nicole. Okay. Now we are the Bellmore-Merrick Democratic Club, and this is the time of year we're qualifying our candidates. So don't forget to stop at the table on your way out. See Bob and Claudia and sign petitions to help us get our candidates on the ballot. So we do have nominating petitions here for the endorsed candidates and for those facing challenges as well. The third thing is a mea culpa, and like I said, I went to Cooper Union. I was right in that East Village where there was a large Ukrainian population. And if any of my buddies heard me use the phrase, the Ukraine, they would have killed me. Someone called me on it and I stand corrected. I apologize. It is Ukraine. It is a sovereign national country. Always was. It was something that the USSR used to call it the Ukraine to sort of denationalize it. So mea culpa, my bad. Now, we're gonna, last announcement, we're gonna cut it down to 2 minutes because there's about 4 or 5 questions, but we want the candidates to be able to get on to other things they need to do and give their closing statements as well. Very important question. What would you, whose turn is it? Kevin, you're first. Okay. What would you do to pass legislation that protects people of color with regards to police encounters and creates accountability for law enforcement?
So I think I mentioned it earlier, where I want to make sure that we're able to fund the police, right? But with inside the legislation of that funding, that we have strings attached. And what those strings attached, basically what I was saying was that you would have 2 legislation points on that. Transparency and accountability, which will basically showcase what police are doing. And the community knows that the police department is operating at a very transparent level where basically we can trust the police. We know that there's a lot of good cops, but we also know we have the bad ones as well. And we have to weed those bad cops out. Good cops are good for the community, but the bad ones cost us money. The bad ones cost us the trust with the community. And the bad ones are those who are being prosecuted now for killing Black and brown folks. We must ensure that we build a trust between the community and the police stations by providing funding for them, but by ensuring that transparency and accountability is built into the legislation.
What would you do to pass legislation that protects people of color with regards to police encounters and creates accountability for law enforcement?
Okay, so one of the first bills that I filed when I got to the legislature was a bill for body camera. And the bill, as far as I saw it, was, well, I introduced the bill. It did not get passed. There was some injunctions and some other things that went along with that, but I never gave up the fight. But that's because I believed in the bill, because the bill to me was a win-win-win situation. You have encounters that happen between police and community, and we want to make sure we capture them because we want to make sure that we have a full record of what occurred. In many cases, it supports the police account. In many cases, it supports the residents account. But at the end of the day, we need to have a true depiction in its best possible way of what occurred. It's also a benefit to the taxpayer because I'll tell you that just last week, I approved a settlement along with my, I think it was 17 colleagues at the time, that voted unanimously for a $2 million settlement. And that was because the exposure was much greater than that. And that was because of an encounter between police and a resident. I think the cameras de-escalate folks. And I think that technology and other police reform initiatives go a long way. Another one, sometimes you can't just jump right out. You have to do a study. You have to have the data to make the decisions. And so unanimously, yet again, passed a piece of legislation that I co-authored with a colleague of mine at the legislature. And it was to study how police interface with the mental aid calls. And so we did a complete study and looked at the outcomes of those calls, the number of calls, the outcomes of those calls, and how we could better engage. And so birthed out of that was a new initiative where police and social workers will respond together. Thank you.
Dave, I think there's a pre-step to that. One of the things I've worked on for 2 decades is voting rights. Our voting rights in this country is under attack. It has 11 states, Republican legislatures are already attacking our voting rights like the Jim Crow South all over again. When everyone who's entitled to vote votes, we can actually have real change because the people who mean well are getting elected and we can address the problem. Right now, the Republican Party wants to say that if we want to do anything with police, we're anti-police. They get to the issue, they beat us on the messaging, and we're stuck here as anti-police. We're not anti-police. I think everyone in this place is pro-police. How do you fix it? Same way we fixed the Jim Crow South, same way we fixed the KKK in the South, federal authorities with federal resources. The FBI going to the Mississippi and Alabama, the FBI doing it with redistricting and going into certain states, Texas, Alabama, still to this day until Trump was in office, still there, changing everything. We need to provide federal resources. Right now, you have New York City, you have Nassau County, all having their own independent civilian review boards. There needs to be a federal funded review board that actually takes in and looks at every time a bad police officer, and you're right, it's very few of them, oversteps the line. Because that bad officer, the one thing a cop hates are the bad officers that bring the bad name on them. We're pro-police. All we have to do is ensure that we have the federal funding in place, that there's a federal board that when incidents hit a certain level, they come in and look at it. They have the resource, they have the funding to do it. And it just requires your representative in Congress to go down there and fight for it, because it's something I think we can get common ground on the other side when we stay away from issue advocacy and just talk about common sense. And that's what I want to do in Washington, bring common sense solutions to problems we've been talking about for way too long. And I think that's the way to handle it. Thank you.
Laura,
So we cannot have 2 systems of justice. One system of justice for white people and one system of justice for Black and brown people. Or even what we've seen. Did anyone here watch that documentary, Making of a Murderer? Did you watch that? Now, if you watch that, like, I don't know if that guy did it or not. I don't know if he killed a woman or not. But what I know is if he was rich, he would not be in jail. We have a system of justice right now that the way it works, that poor people are so disadvantaged in our judicial system, and we need to take action to remedy those injustices. I think along the lines of what Keith said, I think we need to, at a federal level, get money into our police departments to make sure that we have programs in place that will address the bad actions by bad actors. Again, I don't think anybody here is saying all our cops are bad. Most of them are not. But there are some bad actors, and we need to do steps to make sure that there's transparency in reporting of incidents and arrests, that there are resources available that protect both police officers and potential victims, such as body cameras. And in addition, like we've seen just here in Nassau County, right? Commissioner Patrick Ryder, he really is being aggressive on this and trying to have like community officers and building trust within the community. I think initiatives like that are so important. When people in the community know the people who are their police officers, you will have immediately better results. So I think we need to fund programs like that, fund the resources that the local police departments need, and also make sure that we have a uniform. I don't know if we need mandates from DC, but we need a uniform set of guidelines on what is acceptable behavior and what is not. For example, chokeholds, probably not acceptable behavior, right? But we need a standard guidelines that it doesn't vary from one police department to a different police department and a different police department.
I don't know what she said about Pat Ryder.
I'm sorry.
Can I jump in what she said about Patrick Ryder?
You can say that I can't, if otherwise I'll be allowing everyone to jump in. So let me go on to the next question. This is something that I think as a past legislator, everyone wants their legislator to be accessible, responsive, and effective. So this plays into that. District presence. Will you commit to being present in the district? How will you be accessible to residents and other local officials?
Okay.
I think we're starting with Siela, right?
Okay.
Great question.
So as a direct service provider in housing for over 19 years, I pride myself in having the type of leadership that's based on partnership. It's not all about leadership, it's about partnership and having the opportunity to have the real dialogues. And you only have that when you have real access and the community has access to you. My cell phone is public knowledge on the web. And so I get calls all hours of day and night. I respond in my district, whether it be a fire, if there's been any other type of tragedy, I try to be boots on the ground. When COVID hit, I walked door to door in almost all the seniors, certified senior center communities, and walked door to door to give out masks. Make sure when we got to the stage of vaccines, walk door to door to make sure people could get vaccines. I believe boots on the ground, grassroots type of constituent services, and I will uphold that. That's the whole reason why I'm looking to serve this district, and it's because I love this district and I love what it's comprised of in the communities, and I plan to be in all the communities. That's how I think that I've been able to be successful in bringing solutions to issues that the residents care about. It's because I'm there, boots on the ground, hearing from them day in and day out. Thank you.
Thanks, Siela. Keith?
Every member of Congress, it's $975,000 that he has to use on staff and office space. That's what it's used for. You're limited to 18 staffers. That includes everything in Washington and everything here in the district. I'd use it a little differently. Most usually have a main office, a very small satellite and office building that are mostly in DC. Now, I'll have 3 offices in the district. I won't hire more than 12 to 13 staff members to fund that we're actually around the district. If we have central office in Malverne, centrally located in the district. If we want in the west, probably Westbury, or even coming down to Wantagh, and then I'd obviously have one in Elmont, Valley Stream, or maybe Garden City, depending what's most centrally located. That will be staffed 7 days a week for anyone to come in and speak to us. Anyone has issues, especially small businesses trying to get those loans through COVID, they need help doing them. We'll show you how to do them. Anyone here has an issue with tax and agency or anything else that the federal government provides, there'll be 3 places for you to go, not 1, 3. We're not going to balloon our staff to the maximum 18, only have 1 office. We're going to have 3 full offices, fully staffed, district-wide. Anyone who knows me in Malverne, kind of like Siela, everyone has my cell. I pride myself on being in the district. I pride myself on being here more than in Washington, because at the end of the day, you're the one who sends me there. If I'm not here working with you, don't send me back. We got to do this for you, and we got to have the district there to make sure we are successful in everything we need to get done in Washington. Thank you.
Laura?
So I have 4 kids, 2 of whom are still at home. So I think if I wasn't in district, I'd probably be in a lot of trouble. I plan to go to Washington to do what I have to do there, vote, meet with people, do my job in Washington, but then I plan to be home to be with my family and to be available to all my constituents. As Town of Hempstead Supervisor, I was out almost every single night. Every single weekend, I had a schedule of events. I was in my community, working with the residents, listening to the residents. On my 2nd or 3rd day in office, we had the snow cyclone bomb. My understanding was the prior supervisor would go home at like 4 and let the highway commissioner just deal with it. I was in my office up until 11 p.m. when I started getting messages seeing things on Facebook. Right? Because the highway department and the emergency helpline weren't getting messages to me. I had to find out on Facebook that East Rockaway hadn't been plowed. It had been snowing for like 7 hours. So I got my chief of staff, I got my communications officer, we got in a car and we drove to East Rockaway. And I saw that there were streets canals had never been plowed. There was a woman who posted that she was 9 months pregnant and her mother-in-law had cancer. And if she went into labor, she could not get out of her house. I went to her block, I got out of the car, I walked down to her house and I called the commissioner who was supposed to be sending people there. And I said, you better get here right now. And I'm not leaving this site until you get here and get this pregnant woman lady's street and driveway cleared out for her. I stayed there, I knocked on the door, I stayed with her until that street was done. Then I found out that nobody had plowed in Roosevelt because nobody cared about Roosevelt in the Town of Hempstead in the past. So then I went to Roosevelt to check it out to see if it was true. Nothing. There was a whole area that nothing had been plowed. So I called up the other guy who was supposed to be plowing that area because we had 3 different commissioners plowing 3 different areas. And I stayed there until he got there. And it was funny because my chief of staff didn't really know me then. And so when he showed up, he thought he was going to have to be the tough guy and like tell me. But then he found out pretty quickly. I'll be there for you, is what I'm saying.
I'm happy, Laura, I was not working for you.
All right, Kevin.
So it's nice to hear our elected officials doing their job, thank God. One of the reasons why I'm running is what I just seen right now during the pandemic. The first 50 days, government shut down. Nobody was able to help anyone. Everybody was scared, everybody was living at home. I'm the CEO of American Islamic Radio. I put my number in the community. I said, if you guys need food, water, masks, groceries, anything, give me a call. I put Lewis's number out too. I think the first day we got 15 calls saying, hey, I don't have work right now. And are you guys giving food? I said, yes. So what we did, we went to Restaurant Depot and we grabbed groceries and we dropped them off to those people's houses, 15 of them. That night, from 15, we went to 45 people. From 45, we went to 60 families a day, a week's worth of groceries. It consisted of 35 volunteers. We lived in the wealthiest country in the world, but yet people were starving. Reaching out to me, I'm not an elected, I'm just a community member who put my number out there. Saying government's not helping us, they have no answers, their offices are closed. So when politicians tell you that they're there, where were you those 55 days before government started passing grants? Don't listen to this. Listen to the people. That I was helping every single day, risking our lives. We had no PPE. We were wearing handkerchiefs. I have asthma. I'm not, the skinniest and the healthiest, but we were risking our lives to serve our people. So will I be in the district serving our community? I already am. Where else am I going to go?
One more question.
All right, so thank you very much. And I will tell you, having been in office, nothing seems more important than constituent service. It really is. And I hope, and I know all of you, I think you would give really great constituent service. Best compliment I ever got was from a Republican. He said, if I have a problem at 2 in the morning, the only person I'm calling is Dave, and people need to know you're going to respond. And I think all 4 of these people will be great. I'm gonna.
Round of applause for Dave.
I actually have to run to, believe it or not, a Knights of Columbus to talk about property taxes. But anyway, Congress just passed a $1.5 trillion spending bill. What is one thing in the bill you are happy with, and one thing in the bill you disagree with? And is it Keith?
Keith, okay. One thing I'm happy with is the money for infrastructure. There's one thing this district needs is a ton of infrastructure improvements, highways, bridges, all the things happening in this district, rails. We need to make sure we increase and bring that money back here. And a lot of that money hasn't been earmarked yet. So someone at this table is going to get down there and be able to have the chance to do it. And if you understand how the bills are worked and you understand what the legislation is and you have the relationships to pull it off, you will be able to make sure we get real infrastructure improvements right here in the 4th Congressional District. One of the things, I think the other question was something you don't like that's in the bill. Is
Yes,
that
that's
correct?
right. That's the question.
Listen, there's been a few pork projects that I've seen, but there are about 3 in there that I think take the cake. One of them's a museum that went open in Nebraska, something about, corn and, museum for potato chips. I'm not kidding. These things are actually in the spending bill. There are 3 of them, one in Oregon, I forget exactly what that was. And there's one in California, some pork project for a congressman. I'm all for pork if it's actually coming back and helping you, but putting it in infrastructure, putting it in the schools, putting it into affordable housing, putting it into protecting our police. But there were 3 things in there that are truly pork beyond pork that I am not happy with. But again, the infrastructure that is in that bill is significant. It gives even more than Build Back Better. There's more there for infrastructure improvements than we've ever seen. The problem is we need to get down there with the right relationships and resources and make sure that money comes into this district, not to the other districts. And that's what I plan on doing when I get to Washington. Thank you.
So what I like about the bill, Keith, I like the infrastructure as Town of Hempstead supervisor. The prior supervisor spent about $4 million a year on fixing roads, and then that never allocated $4 million, never even spent it. In my first capital plan, I allocated $50 million to repaving our roads. And so I think that's important, but I think one of the really important things about the bill is improving internet access. For those of us who had children at home during remote schooling, could you imagine if you didn't have Wi-Fi, your kids basically couldn't learn. So that is, I think, a right that everybody should be able to have internet and Wi-Fi access in their community, because it's something that we need right now to just function in our society. So those are two things that I really, really like about the infrastructure bill. I agree with Keith. Like, I think we have a problem now where we have these massive bills, again, where there's pork thrown in there and everybody wants to throw in their pork, and there's really no oversight of what's going in there when you have these ridiculous projects in there. So that's a criticism of that bill, and just about the structure of how we pass these omnibus bills.
Just to be clear, I'm okay with pork if it's coming back to the 4th Congressional District, just not other people's pork.
Okay, Kevin.
What I liked about the bill was the infrastructure portion about it, right? The fact that when you'll see the disparities between CD4, when you're driving in one neighborhood, you're scared your tire's gonna fall off, and you're going to another area and you don't even know if your car is on or not. So I'm happy that they got this passed, right? But the most important thing about passing this legislation, right, is that when the funding comes here, we just can't give it to any contractor to do the job.
Right.
I believe that we should have the funding that's coming in for these projects should be given to local businesses, local construction corps, to empower them. The MWBE component of it should be fully mandated and not just another waiver given. Because we see how in Nassau County waivers are given left and right because MWBE compliance is not done. So yes, we have all this money coming, but we have to ensure that the money is allocated to MWBEs and that the money is allocated to our communities, because this is what matters the most. Everybody talks about bringing the money in, right? Yes, money is allocated, but how are we going to spend it if we're not empowering our own?
So the answer is that infrastructure, right? That's really a bonus. It's a bonus because we'll have safer roads and infrastructure, bridges, tunnels, but it's also important because we can create jobs, workforce development. We can upskill our workforce and make sure that everyone has an opportunity to earn and make a decent living here. It's a challenging place to live. Taxes are high. You don't get enough back in our deductions from the federal government, SALT, right? So getting jobs, creating careers for individuals to be able to sustain a lifestyle of affordability here on Long Island, I think is important. So 100% infrastructure bill, 1,000% jobs, jobs, jobs. Thank you.
Maybe you could take it. Does everybody from the audience have a question that they didn't put down that they'd like to ask? Yes.
Simple. One of the major, my name is Louis Mendez, by the way. One of the major components that has not been talked about here is the biggest responsibility that you will all have when you go to Congress, which is immigration. I would love to see all of us here are as a result of some immigrant coming down the pike over the last 300 years. Some of us came here because we wanted to, and some of us were forced to come here. And so DACA is one. Those are the dreamers. TPS, we have Central Americans and Caribbeans and Africans who have been paying taxes for 20 years in a whole loop of paying fees constantly, and yet no path to citizenship. Yep. And then we have our immigration system that's so broken to the point where families are being torn apart and no one is addressing those issues. The kids at the border. So this is an important component of what actually makes up the district. one of the most diverse districts in the state of New York, from Westbury all the way to the Five Towns, to Long Beach, to Elmont. And the four of you up there, except for the one that's not here, it'll be five, represent the diversity: women, African Americans, Latino, South Asian, white males, and obviously a Caribbean American in Carrie Salaja. So I would love to have that question addressed by each one of them.
Okay, Laura?
Yeah, I think I'm first, yeah.
Yes.
So I agree with you 100%. We have so many people living here who've been here for years, even decades, generations of family who have been here without a path to citizenship. They're the fabric of our society, these people. I know in my diner, there was a waiter there who'd been there forever in the Golden Reef Diner in Rockville Center. And all of a sudden they took him away. He got deported, right? This guy was beloved by people in our community, and people were taking up money to try to get him a lawyer, right? We need to have a clear path to citizens for people who have been living here, who have been contributing for taxes, contributing to our churches, contributing to our government, contributing in many, many ways. I absolutely support a path to citizenship.
Well, I'm the product of immigrants, so I think you guys all know where I stand on that. The most important thing for me, coming from Westbury, living there 29 years of my life, when I was in high school, I had friends who were dreamers, right? And when we graduated high school together, one of them was much smarter than me, higher GPA than me. I said, hey, where are you going to college? She goes, I'm not going to college, I'm going to work. I said, why? I'm not a citizen. And then seeing her suffer throughout the years, somebody who's high honor roll our entire lives, having to go work as a maid just to make a living. So you want to talk about immigration? I've witnessed it firsthand. I've witnessed people suffer for this. And Louis, let me tell you one thing, what I want to do. I'm going to go visit the border within this month. Because that's something I want to see from my eyes, so I can bring that to Washington to change it. Because no mother should be separated from their child. This is America. We're the greatest country in the world. Quote by the great Nelson Mandela that says, you can judge a nation on how they treat its children. And if we're putting kids in cages, what does that make us?
I'm also first generation American. Father's from a small South American country called Suriname, and mother's from St. Kitts, Nevis, and Anguilla, very small countries. I absolutely 100% support the pathway to citizenship. I think that we have failed as a country, whether we opened our borders to some or some came in other ways. We have to create a hope for prosperity, a hope so that people will not feel disenfranchised. They will not feel desperate. Desperate people do desperate things. We need to be able to allow for folks to be able to earn a living. I witnessed something that I'm happy New York State did the right thing on. There was a horrific accident that happened at the Long Island Railroad crossing in Westbury. And it was because these gentlemen who were driving got involved in a minor accident, but because they were so fearful that they would be deported and separated from their families and their children, they decided to try and evade the police. And they went over that railroad crossing, and unfortunately, they did not make it across. It's that type of desperation that it's deep embedded in individuals who are here without that opportunity, without that pathway. So I just know that it's the right thing to do. We have to give a pathway. We have to allow individuals to go to school and better themselves and become a part of the fabric of what we know and love here in the United States. Thank you.
Louis, it's a good question. It's something near and dear to my heart. For the past 8 years, me and two of my partners have pro bono represented green card holders, dreamers, and anything else to try and get them citizenship. It's something we've done for about 300 or so different individuals of all different races here in Nassau County and a little bit in Suffolk. I've been to the border. I've been there with two United States congressmen. I was there 2022. I was there just before COVID came in. It was probably February of 20 or so. I was down there with two United States congressmen. I got to tell you something. You're not American when you go there. And I got to tell you, I actually saw kids in cages. Now, I don't, they're barbed wired rooms, not even having sleeping bags with no adult supervision anywhere around. That is not the America I think we live in. That is not the America we aspire to be. And that's not the America I grew up in, at least. But I saw that firsthand, and it's despicable. It is absolutely against everything our founding fathers stood for. It's against every principle we've ever yearned to be for. It is not who we are. Obama had it right. He had a dreamer program that he put in his 3rd year in office before his 2nd term that actually, I see Siela back. I see Sylvia back there. She's worked on this issue for a long time. They actually had paths to citizenship. They actually had marks to be able to become full citizens. Trump comes in, throws it all out the window, separates families, separates children. I think the number now is there's still somewhere around 100 kids who still have not been, since Biden came in, put back with their families. They can't even find the children's mothers and fathers. Nothing. This is not the country I think you and I think we live in. We got to get real policies. We got to get this issue fixed. And honestly, there is a platform, there is a path. If you go back to what Obama started in his 3rd year in office with the Dreamers program, we must become America again, and we must make Washington work for us. That's how the issue gets solved.
Now we'll go into the closing statements. We'll each have, oh, you did you go yet?
No, I think
Oh, yeah, I'm going.
starts going.
All right,
I was just
okay,
asking.
skip some. I thought I missed something. All right. Yes, I know we're starting to go this way. We'll go this way for the closing statements. So, Kevin, you go first. You have 3 minutes. 3 minutes, I think, because it's a closing statement. Okay, thank you.
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for listening to me today. I'm running to be your 4th Congressional District Congressman. And with your support, I know I could win. The one thing I want you guys to take from this today, that all of these people up here are elected officials. They talk about their accomplishment and what they have done. If you look at it today, has your lives changed in the last 15 years? Have you benefited from what they have done? Or are we in the same scenario? Washington needs a change. And I'm the guy for that. They might have connections, they might know people down there. I'm a type of person where if I get to know you, I'm friends with you, and we can make real change. I'm willing to work across the aisle. I'm willing to work with anybody and anybody who wants to make this great country great again. I am not here belongs to any party. I will not answer to any party. I will only answer to you, the people. It's my responsibility to take what I have learned here today and to be better. It is my responsibility to listen to the community's feedback and take that to Washington when I get elected. It's my responsibility to serve the people, not a party chair, not anyone except the people. I am running anti-establishment for that purpose because Washington needs to see a change. America needs to see a change. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm fed up on the way politics is running this country. So remember Kevin Shakil, I'm running for Congress, 29 years old. Thank you.
So I just want to say,
Don't trip.
I'm not gonna try. I think all elected officials is not being a bad thing. I'm not an elected official right now. And by the way, after I got out of office, I was working with All Hearts and Hands, delivering masks and COVID supplies to hospitals, not because I was a politician and I wanted to do a pretty picture, but because I wanted to help. And I think in my tenure as a town of Hempstead supervisor, I did make things better. I absolutely made things better. That place was completely operated in the dark. I went in, I passed transparency legislation, all contracts are online. And then if you can look at the contracts and you can look at the bidding documents, then you can be your own watchdog of your government. You could never see what happened in the town of Hempstead, because even if you filed a FOIL request, they would just not respond to you, okay? They just would ignore you. I passed a capital plan that allocated money to communities of color that had been ignored forever. The priority parks to be fixed in the town of Hempstead were in Elmont, in Lakeview, in Hempstead, and those were the priorities. Now, I'm gone, so whether they're following my 5-year capital plan, I can't control that anymore. But that was a priority. I delivered what I said I was going to do. I changed the way they did business in the town of Hempstead. Before, they would just give out contracts to whatever lawyer was their buddy or whatever like contractor, engineer was their buddy. I changed that. I put in a new procedure for handing out contracts to people. It was a bipartisan review process where the elected officials weren't involved. It was people from the various departments who would then review people and make a recommendation. For services such as lawyers, there was an RFQ process, and I gave the opportunity for people, everybody to compete. That was a critical difference. Everybody could compete. You didn't have to be buddies with the politician. You just had to fill out a form and submit it. And as long as you met certain criteria, then you could be on our panel of experts to be used for a given project, for a lawsuit or for an engineering project or for whatever it is. So I do think that all of us, we may have all been elected and we may have been doing our jobs, but I think the point is that we did our jobs I think I did my job in an exemplary fashion. I think you can trust me to go to Washington and fight for you, because that's what I did for you every single day. And I didn't fight for a party. I don't think, I agreed, like shouldn't be an insider thing. I'm not into like, I know everybody. I can make all backroom deals. I know about how to make the deal. You know what? I like front room deals. I like transparency. And guess what? When I go to Washington, I'm very friendly. And I will know lots of people when I get there. And I am not worried about not knowing a congressman or this one or that one. I represented CEOs of corporations, but that doesn't really matter to me because I'm not there to represent them. I'm there to represent you. And that's what you can count on if you elect me to be your congresswoman.
Nice move, by the way.
Thank you.
So you've heard 4 people tonight. Pretty much agreed on 99.9% of everything we said. I don't think you heard any disagreement. I think you know where we all stand, pretty much in the same place. We're all Democrats. But who can actually deliver? That's the question you all got to go home and ask yourselves. Who can actually go and on day one know what a bathroom is, know what bills to go and address, and bring money back to you? Who has the relationships and the resource to make it work? Everyone comes up here and says, I will make the change. And they swear to you they will. They have no clue how to do it. And when they get there, they're still trying to find the bathroom and the back doors. I actually know what a bathroom is in DC. I actually know the people in DC, and I can actually use the resources to deliver for you. This is not a time to just send people down who want to make change. It's a time to send people down who actually know how to implement the change we've been looking for 20 years. Ladies and gentlemen, you obviously don't live in Malverne. Good, because I got elected the mayor of Malverne. We've repaved 72% of the roads, updated all the tech, got $8 million in grants for parks. I never raised taxes once. I put money in surplus every year without raising taxes. You know why I did that, Laura? Because I have relationships in the county, the state, and other places to use that, not for me, for the residents. That's why you send people to Washington, to be bigger than themselves, to use every professional, personal, political contact they have to get the job done, to get the legislation, so this district gets funded. That's the point. I'm not a politician. I'm a public servant. And I wake up every day and I try and do good just like all of them do. But we need to send public servants who can actually do the job. Public servants who are going above themselves, using things that they are capable of doing for the betterment of all of you. This is an important election. We have never seen a country in crisis like we're in right now. I'm doing this because I don't know what I'm leaving my children. I know my wife and I are teaching them, but when you watch that news every night and you read those newspapers, I feel as if we're leaving them something that's less than what my parents left me. And I know you all feel the same way. This is not about fighting with Republicans. This is not about fighting with Democrats. This is about knowing how, going down there, rolling up the sleeves and doing the job for every child, every grandchild, and everyone in this district. This will be the most important election we voted in 25 years at least, especially with a red wave coming. And Laura, you did great things. You also didn't get elected again. And the fact of the matter is, we need people who can go down there and actually stay down there and get the job done for everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to see this through, and we need to make Washington work again for you, for me, and for all of our families. And that's why I'm running for DC. Thank you.
If I go there, let us know which way the bathroom.
I'll tell you.
I might need to use one.
So I'd like to first take this opportunity to thank the Bellmore-Merrick Club for putting us all together, assembling everyone. I'd like to thank the audience for being here and for really being a great audience. No heckling, no anything went on here. It was really a great place to be tonight. I would like to say that it has been my highest honor to be in service to Nassau County's 2nd Legislative District and every other public office that I've held. The trust that the community has bestowed in me, I hope that I've paid it forward threefold in my heartfelt service to this district. I have gone to that Nassau County Legislature, and when they said, you're going in to a Republican majority, don't expect to get much done. I went in and I built relationships. I built partnerships. Some of the biggest accomplishments for the office, for the greater Nassau County community came out of partnerships, relationships that I was able to build both on the side of the aisle that I sit in, but across the aisle. It was Fran Becker, the legislator from Limburg, that worked with me to start the mental health first aid initiative, to bring money and allocate into the budget to make sure that we could do trainings in the community, to make sure we trained our staff. So I would say for someone who did not have a very long resume in politics, that if you listen, make informed decisions, be pragmatic in your approach in delivering solutions, but most important, you build those partnerships, both in your community and in the municipal government, with your colleagues, wherever you're sitting, whether it be in the village or the county or the town, you can succeed. But it's not, and it should never be about you. Your success should be about the people that you serve. You should be able to deliver results that improve the quality of life of the folks that you're entrusted and charged with serving. I've done that as a housing authority executive director for the seniors and those that were disenfranchised. I've done it for the students in our schools, and I've done it for the constituents that I serve in Nassau County. It would be my honor to go to Congress. And trust me, when I get there, that same survivor spirit that has carried me 18 years later after cancer, that same experience that led me to want to do more will be with me. That fighting spirit will take me to Washington, and I will work earnestly, not for me, but for you. Thank you.